I love the idea of making bread at home, but I'm a bad planner, so I never seem to get around to it. That's why I love these Italian flatbreads. They're called Piadine, and they just have a few simple ingredients. In under an hour, you can have bread to make a sandwich with. We're gonna start with the flour first. I have all-purpose flour here. We need 2 cups. I'm gonna use my scale instead. It's a lot easier, a lot more precise to use a scale, and I can make sure that I get the same amount every time. And so I'm looking for 10 ounces of flour. Perfect. Now we want a little bit of salt. I have some table salt here, a ½ teaspoon. Now, most Italian flatbread recipes that we found had 3 ingredients: flour, salt, and some sort of fat. We're gonna add another ingredient today, which is one of the keys to this recipe. We're gonna add a little bit of baking powder. I'm just gonna use 3/4 of a teaspoon. That's gonna aerate that bread just a little bit so it doesn't eat so dense. Now I'm gonna take this and put it into our food processor. So we have all of our dry ingredients in the food processor. We're just gonna pulse this really quickly and have it come together. Okay, now for the fat component. This dish traditionally uses lard. We're gonna use vegetable oil instead. It has a little bit more neutral flavor, and it's also pantry friendly. So I'm gonna add 3 tablespoons. And I'm just gonna process it until it's incorporated into the flour. Okay, for our last ingredient, we're gonna add a little bit of water, just 3/4 of a cup of water. And this is at room temperature, and we just wanna slowly feed this into the food processor until that dough comes together. Okay, so this is all combined, and I'm gonna take this out. I'm gonna knead it really quickly on the countertop, about 15 seconds. Now, if it's feeling really sticky, you can take a little bit of flour. You don't want to add too much flour at this point. Okay, so we're going to make 4 flatbreads. So I'm just going to divide this into 4 pieces right now. I'm just going to form these into nice tight balls, and that will help with rolling later on. What I'm using is the bottom of my hands to kind of create a cupping action. Just a nice tight ball like that. Set those there. Okay, so we have our 4 balls of dough. I'm just gonna cover this with some plastic wrap, let it sit for ½ an hour, let that gluten relax, and we'll come back and roll them out. Our dough has rested for 30 minutes. That gluten has had time to relax, and now it's time to roll them out. So I'm just gonna start with a little bit of flour on the counter. You don't want a lot here, you don't need a lot. Take one of our pieces, keep the other ones covered. I'm just gonna pat this out into about a 5-inch circle. I'll take our rolling pin, and we're looking for a 9-inch round here, and that will fit nicely in the bottom of a 12-inch skillet. What I like to do is I like to take the rolling pin and roll from the center of the dough out like this. That looks about good. Oh, 9 inches perfectly. So I'll just set this one aside. I want to make sure that I have a little bit more flour on the counter up here. Like so. Perfect. Dough number 2. Again, from the center of the dough out. So I'll finish rolling out these pieces of dough, and then we'll come back and cook. It's now time to cook the flatbreads. And I'm gonna cook this in a 12-inch cast iron skillet. Cast iron is really nice to cook these flatbreads in because it will cook it really quickly. The quicker you cook it, the moister that they'll stay. If you cook it for too long, they're gonna become dry and crackery. So to test the temperature of this, I don't have any oil in here, so I don't have that signifier to make sure it's hot. I'm just gonna take a little bit of water, I'm gonna drop it on the surface, and it should sizzle. That sounds about ready. And now it's time to cook our flatbreads. But before I put the bread in the pan, I just want to take a fork and dock the dough a little bit. And that will allow us to get rid of any air bubbles there. We don't want big air bubbles in our bread. Okay, right into our skillet. So we're going to cook this for 1 to 2 minutes on each side. While this is cooking, you want to keep a fork around in case you get any bubbles that come up, and you can kind of poke those like that. And I also like to kind of turn this around in the pan a little bit to make sure that we get a nice even browning. Okay, I'm gonna take a peek. Oh, that's great. See, we got some little browning right here. So we're gonna cook this on the second side. Same thing, 1 to 2 minutes until we have some nice spotty browning there. And again, you wanna have your fork around to make sure that you don't have any air bubbles forming. Okay, I'm gonna check our second side to see if it's ready. Oh, that's great. We have some nice browning. Now I'm just gonna take this and slide it out to a plate. I'm gonna fold this in half while it's nice and warm and pliable. If you wait until it cools down a little bit, there's a chance the bread will crack. I'm gonna cover this and keep this warm, and we're gonna cook the second one. Our second one, I'm just gonna dock this really quickly. Lay it in our pan. You can see that I have a little wrinkle in there when I put it in the pan. It's not a big deal. It won't affect the cooking at all. So we're just gonna let this cook for 1 to 2 minutes. Okay, we're gonna check our first side. Nice browning. Flip it over, 1 to 2 minutes. We'll cook that second side. Okay, we'll check our second side. We can see you have nice browning. Take this out. He'll join his partner, cover that up. Now cook the rest of our bread. Our breads are done, and now it's my favorite part, filling them. Now, these can be filled a number of ways. You can go savory with roasted peppers and artichokes. You can go sweet, you can fill it with Nutella and bananas. That's one of my kids' favorites. But I'm gonna make my favorite today. I'm gonna do a little tomato and mozzarella. So I have a nice fresh tomato here. Just take the core out. Some nice thick slices. I also have some fresh mozzarella. Okay, time to fill. Take one of our breads, our tomato, add a pinch of salt to our tomatoes. I'm going to lay some slices of fresh mozzarella over them. And I'm going to take a couple leaves of basil and tear them into rough pieces. And last of all, a little bit of extra virgin olive oil. Okay, now it's time to eat. The texture of the flatbread is just great. It's moist, it's supple, and it really complements the filling. It's not overpowering the tomatoes and the mozzarella. It's fantastic. This flatbread is so easy and so tasty. I really encourage you to make it at home. But remember 2 key points. Put a little bit of baking powder in the dough and make sure that you cook it in a cast iron skillet. So from America's Test Kitchen at Home, a really simple recipe for Piadine.
Thanks for watching. You can get all the recipes and product reviews from this season and more on our website. That's americastestkitchen.com/TV.
Thanks for watching America's Test Kitchen. What'd you think?
Well, leave a comment and let us know which recipes you're excited to make, or you can just say hello.
You can find links to today's recipes and reviews in the video description.
And don't forget to subscribe to our channel.
See you later.
I'll see you later.